Everyone that's in this meeting room. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone from all around the world. Warmest greetings from Taipei, Taiwan here. And thank you all for joining us today. The forum is hosted by WithRed, which is also known as the Global WithRed Association. The forum's theme today is how to build an effective public-private partnership in promoting parent equity. My name is Bibi. I'll be your host today for today's forum, and my pronouns are her, she, her. I'm more than honored to actually have 5 excellent speakers and panelists from different countries, cultures, and backgrounds joining me today. I really can't wait to hear all of your stories. I'm personally a menstrual equity, gender equality, diversity, and inclusion activist. I'm also a writer, an inspirational speaker, and of course, the founder of WithRed. WithRed is the first nonprofit organization here in Taiwan focusing on eliminating period poverty and period stigma and promoting menstrual equity through education, social services, and advocacy. And yeah, of course, we're all in Taiwan. So now I'm having my colleagues that are next to me. So I'm having Sylvia here. And I'm having Ping Jing here.
Hello.
So they will be helping us out in today's forum. And some crucial reminders before we actually start. So the first thing is the language of this forum will be in English. We do not provide any interpretation services for this event. We apologize for any inconvenience that we may have caused. For those of you who come from Taiwan and do not find it comfortable using English to ask questions, please feel free to ask your questions in Taiwanese or Mandarin. We will translate them into English for the speakers and panelists. And if you find it difficult to understand or if we speak too fast, please do let us know at any time. My colleagues will see what they can do to assist you at any time when you find it difficult to understand. If you have any questions, please leave your questions in the chat box, which is at the right side of the screen. And we will collect them and pass them to the speakers during the panel discussion. Please stay on mute during the whole webinar just to ensure that we do not disturb the event by accident. And after the reminder, so we're now finally heading to today's main event. Welcome, everyone. Today's forum is going to be divided into 2 parts. We will first have a short keynote speech session, and there are 4 speakers joining us today and 5 panelists that will be there. I will also be doing a short presentation introducing WithRed and our experiences building public-private partnerships here in Taiwan to promote menstrual equity. The second part will be a 20 minutes panel. So keep all your questions for the panel discussion. We're going to have a lovely panel. I'm pretty sure about that. Everyone is welcome to ask questions about things that you would really like to know from the panelist. And for now, please do allow me to take this opportunity to introduce our speakers and panelists for today. So I'm personally very excited still now, even though it's 10 p.m. here in Taiwan. I know it's 3 a.m. now for Danica, because it is a tremendously treasurable moment to actually meet all these fantastic people that I've wanted to meet and listen to their stories for such a long time. Let us welcome our first speaker of today. Her name is Shella. Her pronouns are she, her, and she's the founder of Period Positive Campaign and the author of Own Your Period and Be Period Positive. Say hello to the audience.
Hello.
And we are having our next speaker with Danica. Her pronouns are she, her. She's the founder of the Period Place. She's also an experienced digital marketing specialist based in New Zealand. Hi, Danica.
Morena.
Hello, and then now we are having our third speaker, which is Rabia. Rabia, her pronouns are she, her, and she's the founder and executive director for Action Girls Foundation, AGF. It is an NGO headquartered in Dodoma, Tanzania. Hi, Rabia. Do you want to say hi to the audience?
Hi.
Hi, Rabia. And now we're having our last speaker, which is Radha. Her pronouns are she, her. She's a menstrual rights activist and a founder of Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation. Hi, Radha. Do we see Radha? Oh, okay, right. And then now we're introducing our last panelist, which is Terry. Terry is a menstrual, sexual, and reproductive health manager at Bloody Good Period, and she's currently based in London. Hi, Terry.
Hi everyone.
All right, so let us welcome all the speakers and panelists. Now we are entering the keynote speech session. Please do feel free to type in your questions, if you have any questions right now already. And since I will be introducing more about WithRed and the project that we have been doing and working on, I guess for now we can just get started. Yeah, okay. So let us welcome the first speaker, which is myself. Let me share my screen. It's gonna take a little.
I just saw the name on your red jumper as you stood up, Little Red Hood. I love it. I want to order one. That is amazing. We need some international merch down here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Where has Vivi gone?
Hi, everyone. Sorry,
Oh,
my laptop literally decided to sleep just now. So again, I'm going to share my screen. Right. We're having some technical issues here. I'll try to solve it just now. So instead of me sharing the screen, Sylvia will be sharing the presentation for me. And I will start without the presentation first.
You got this. You go, girl.
I know, I got this. All right. Okay, I think it's sending. So once again, hi everyone. I'm the founder of WithRed. I'm just making sure you guys can all hear my voice. Can you guys all hear me? Yeah, okay. So a wee bit more about myself here. My academic background was in infectious diseases medicine, actually, and humanitarian work and gender studies when I was studying back in the UK in Edinburgh University in Scotland. And I have experience managing nonprofit organizations in actually both Europe and Asia. I am very passionate about diversity and inclusion, peer equity and democracy and freedom. That has been my passion ever since I was in primary school. And today I will be sharing with you our experiences working with a local and central government and local and international corporates and what we have learned from trying to build an effective partnership with them while promoting menstrual equity. And because I'm very passionate about peer equity, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I founded the organization called WithRed, because I want everybody to feel comfortable putting their names with Red, so that means they can join the movement, and that's why we've used this name. We're a nonprofit organization based in Taiwan. Our main focus includes period poverty, stigma, inequality, inclusive peer education, and peer-friendly environment. We work locally with different communities across every city and county. Oh, here comes my presentation. Great. So now I'm in the third slide. And we achieve our mission with advocacy, education, and social service work, which I mentioned before. And we've also launched a program last year, which is very interesting. We're preserving the history and culture of menstruation throughout the past 80, 90 years in Taiwan, which is very exciting. Actually, so at the back of my background here, we're actually having our exhibition hall, which is, back there, but you guys are not going to see that today. We actually wrote a book about it and film a documentary as well. The documentary is currently available online, but it's only in Taiwanese and Mandarin. We're planning on making English subtitles for it. So if you guys are very, passionate about watching it, then just wait us for a bit. We're going to make English subtitles for it. And we have also been doing loads of research on everything about period. We especially value people's first-hand experience and stories. We record them, we amplify them, and we investigate the challenges faced by people working in different industries with period. And all right, so that's basically me enough for the intro, and I'm gonna finally move on to my actual presentation today. So the menstrual movement in Taiwan is a rather grassroots, bottom-up movement, and our experience and journey working with the public sector and finally making period rights into the agenda and changes in policy is also bottom-up. And there are two strategies that we have taken since the beginning. These two are later on proved to be very, very crucial for building an effective public-private partnership, at least here in Taiwan. The first one is raising public awareness. So by attracting public attention towards period equity, we can then build a solid basis to our advocacy work. This can also push period equity to the mainstream and make it a popular topic for all. So everybody is talking about period equity right now. And how we can actually achieve this is by emphasizing the connection between menstruation and daily life. So what we do is we amplify this, saying that period is something that's very natural and naturally embedded with our daily life. So that's why we should and we can all, join this movement. And we emphasize the connection between period and people of all genders, communities, and industries. So this also makes it an inclusive topic that everyone is welcome and able to join. And this then will link to my next point, which is being conscious about the diversity and inclusion in period movement. We value diverse experience and ensure we do not shut our doors against anyone from any communities. This can also make more people feel the connection, especially when they see something that's, highly relatable stories, then they want to join and they want to share the stories as well. We also promote simple change-making actions that everyone can do immediately so that people won't find participating in this movement difficult. And in that case, people will actually be more willing to join and to make a change in their daily lives. And that's how we can show the government, especially those democratic ones, one, people actually care about the topic. Two, they not only care about the topic, but also are willing to take part of the change. Three, it is time for you to join before it's too late. So that's how we actually make the government notice us and notice period topics. And here comes our next strategy. So we work directly with local schools, communities, and frontline workers, including teachers, nurses, and social workers. We value people's first-hand experience, as I mentioned before, and we make sure we actually understand the challenges that they face and their needs before we take actions. So our actions and solutions are based on their needs and making the problem solutions fit. We also make ourselves part of the front line and the solution. So when we finally make changes in the policy, we can monitor the implementation and ensure the comprehensive implementation is actually going on in all communities. And after all these, we have finally made period a mainstream topic now in Taiwan, and our government has finally heard our voice. So this is something that is very exciting. And most importantly, when they actually heard us, our voice were loud enough to make sure things are not going to be a flash in the pan, but long-lived. So this was our strategy. And here comes some of the examples of us working with the government and some of the corporates. So the first one is the social worker and educator training program in Tainan. Tainan is a city that's in the southern part of Taiwan. It's very famous for its food, and it used to be our capital back in the days. It's a lovely city, and we cooperate directly with the local government of Tainan and make teacher training program available for all primary teachers and nurses in the city. We've also done a social worker training program to make peer education available also in the community. So not only in schools, but also in the community. And we also do direct teaching and provide educational kits, including student books, teaching guides, innovative teaching materials, and all kinds of master products. For now, we continue to monitor the program's implementation and do consultations for these teachers and these people who work in the communities with our toolkits. And here comes the second example. So for Hsinchu, it is very similar to Tainan. It's another city that is in the western side of Taiwan, but we engage with a local business to join this time. The local business do not only sponsor the program, but also promote the information to the local communities, because a lot of students' parents actually work for this local corporates. So once we realized that, we're like, okay, you know what? We're going to engage them, and they can spread the news to all their staffs. So being, students' parents, they will know this news and they can support the program. And that was the result, actually. So they were really supportive, and they might do, another year for this program. And for next one, this is Taipei City. This is the capital city of Taiwan, and we cooperate with an international corporate, which is called Cortex. I'm sure you guys all know about this brand, this company. We cooperate with them for our program in the capital city. This program is slightly different from others. The government is willing to distribute free menstrual pads in all middle schools in Taipei. It's not a perfect policies yet, but we're trying to make it more and more, towards a comprehensive policy throughout the years. And that was also the reason why international company is here, because it does require a higher amount of money to make this program happen. So for the ones that we cooperate with the capital city, there is this international company coming into the program, and we're trying to work on not only distributing menstrual pads, but also all kinds of menstrual products, and also try to make sure that educational program is part of it, so that people can actually know, the choices that they have, and then they can choose from all different types of choices. So in conclusion, there are two other things that we've learned from our experience, apart from the strategies that we've taken. So first, keep your independence as a third sector. Being a nonprofit organization, we're classified as a third sector. So it is very crucial, because we often face situations where we have to criticize the government or the corporates, especially those international ones. And being an organization funded majorly by the public with small donations, this allows us to be independent and not restrained by other stakeholders. So we are very lucky to have this, and we are going to try our best to actually keep this independence in the future. And our ideology, working with other stakeholders, is also another thing that we want to share here in the forum. Is we do criticize them when things go wrong, but we never give up on them, especially the governments and the corporates. We try to work with them instead of only blaming on them. So this is another thing that we've learned from our experience working with public sector and private companies. And that's all from me. Oh, no, wait. I forgot to share the vision and mission with Thread. So our dream is actually very easy, but not easy to achieve. So it's something that's very simple. We want to make sure that menstruation is not a barrier to people, to opportunities, choices, and well-beings. And we want to make sure that everyone with all different types of backgrounds, regardless of the differences that you have with others, we should all rightfully owning our true selves. And that is our main goal, and that is our vision and mission. And we will continue to advocate for period equity until the day when with Red is no longer needed. So we call ourselves and the projects that we're working on a movement entitled Menstruation. And everyone's participation and engagement matters. So we want to invite all of you guys to join us today. If you are also passionate about period equity, or if you are very passionate about diversity inclusion, you're more than welcome to join, and we would definitely love to have you in the movement. So yeah, that's all for me. Thank you for listening. And I guess I will have to change back to my moderator mode. So I'm not the speaker anymore now, I'm the moderator. And just a reminder before we start with the next speakers, I've seen a lot of questions popping up in the chat box. So yeah, feel free to drop your questions in the chat box at any time, and our staff will collect these questions. Right. So now we are going to introduce our next speaker, which is Chella. Hi, Chella.
Hello.
Chella is a writer, performer, teacher, and designer. She's the founder of Period Positive Campaign and the author of 2 amazing books, which are On Your Period and Be Period Positive. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, and is now based in Sheffield, England. She studied in NYU before moving to the UK. While teaching middle school drama and health, she started using humor and joy to challenge attitudes towards period through her show, which is called Adventures in Menstruating. And she has become a leading expert on menstruation in the UK. So let us welcome our speaker, Chella.
Thanks so much. It's so nice to see everyone, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I think I should wait for my slides to arrive. Here they are. But Vivi, thank you so much for your presentation. It was brilliant, and I think you're gonna recognize what I say at the end, because I'm also asking for people to join in with Period Positive. So stay tuned for that, everybody. But I think we might have to be partners with each other. I'm gonna wave when it's time to change slides, and I'll hopefully be able to keep up with myself, because sometimes I click so fast that it's just little flashes. So please stay tuned. So I'm Chella. I'm the founder of Period Positive. So I'm a qualified teacher. I'm also an artist and a performer. You can see some of my credentials and also a bit of a timeline of what I've gotten up to so far in my work. I'm currently working on a PhD that's on hiatus during the pandemic because it's interactive. All of my work uses co-design and participatory research. It's very hard to find participants when you can't actually be in the same room. So stay tuned for that next year. But I do a lot of work that involves outreach with the public and a lot of advisory of companies, charities, and lawmakers. I use the Period Positive Pledge as a framework for my work that can sort of stand alone without me, because I did a lot of hearts and minds stuff in person until the project got so big that I just couldn't do it anymore. So now there's a pledge that you can follow, and you don't have to talk to me. If you can go on to the next slide, please. So Period Positive looks at long-term solutions to period poverty and menstrual equity based on the sort of idea that it's not just a poverty of products or money, but a poverty of knowledge and access. And it's not just equity to receive products or buy them. It's equity of having access to the same information that doctors have, say, or the same awareness that people who sort of control the discourse know, so that you can also take control of the discourse. It's also focusing on sustainability, representation, and inclusion. So there's a lot of work around looking at the environmental impact of menstrual products and the emotional impact of menstrual shame based on the current media discourse around menstruation. So I was talking about co-design. Co-design is really valuable as a tool for creating change, and probably a lot of you have worked with it without calling it that. It can be called action research or participatory research, or it can also just be called getting feedback from your mates on an idea you had. It's really great, though, to use a co-design structure that lets you think about what you do over and over again, because it means that when one thing doesn't work, it's not over. You haven't failed. You have found a way that it didn't work, and you can go back and try it some more. So some of the early things I did were really based around my frustration with attitudes that I'd picked up to menstruation when I was growing up. A lot of advertising messages, my school period talk was rubbish. I created a zine called Adventures in Menstruating that I turned into a comedy show that I toured around squats and free spaces before I finally got the nerve and the willingness to max out a credit card, and I still haven't paid it off, to be honest, to take my show to Edinburgh and perform it every day at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So that's a month-long festival where people can come see shows for free, often comedy shows, sometimes theatre and poetry, and to get the message out about periods. So using humor and art and actions got people's attention. I did a project called Stains TM that started as a way of selling a period stain so that it was as popular as a fashion logo and getting people to wear it in, they were called flash blobs rather than flash mobs. And this was featured at some art galleries, including Science Gallery at Dublin, and it was part of a number of different campaigns, and it became a classroom resource during my master's research. It was a great way to teach young people how to market something that seemed shameful using the exact same techniques that had marketed the shame of menstruating to young people. So it was a role reversal, and it was really successful. It's ongoing. You can download it yourself. You can go to stainstm.com. So Period Positive is not about loving your period or even having periods. It's not a company. It's not a charity. It's a research and advocacy project because I want to be able to critique companies and charities and the government and also support them. And I felt that being any of those would make it a little bit more difficult because it was, I wanted to be outside of that. So I'm a volunteer for Period Positive. All the other volunteers volunteer for Period Positive, but I do freelance as a menstrual consultant. So I can get paid for my work in advisory, but everything from Period Positive is always free. It's for all genders, including people who are trans or non-binary or intersex who menstruate, and including people who do not menstruate. It's not about saying periods are amazing because sometimes they're a pain in the uterus. The positive comes from it being a positive act to talk about periods. So I'd been doing this work since 2005. I coined the phrase Period Positive in 2006. And eventually in 2017, the UNESCO International Sex Ed Guidelines all were agreed upon by many countries to say that actually it's not very good for you to think periods are shameful. But there'd been a lot of research about this from many people. There's a whole Society for Menstrual Cycle Research that I'd been to conferences of a number of times by then. But it was eventually put in black and white that it was really good to challenge this. And that was a big relief because it made my work easier. So I always start by asking people how much they know about menstruation, because it's important to make sure everybody's at least on the same baseline. And the next thing I do is ask them how comfortable they feel talking about what they know with other people, because that's a different question. It often comes down to how you were taught. Did the person that taught you seem knowledgeable and confident? Because if they didn't, you may have internalized this negativity. If they did seem knowledgeable and confident, you may have internalized enough confidence to challenge what you see. Oh, thanks, Phoebe. That's cool. We are so aligned. This stuff isn't rocket science. I mean, what I tend to say is everyone has the capacity to be period positive, and everyone should have the opportunity to learn how to be more period positive. And then I start talking about Spider-Man because I feel like with great power comes great responsibility. It's very powerful to reclaim the idea that periods are a normal, boring thing that it should be every day, like sneezing or, like learning about your digestion. So if someone who teaches you about it isn't knowledgeable and confident, it can go a bit wrong because you don't have the inner strength to challenge the negativity that you see. So short summary of what we should know. We should know the vocabulary of menstruation. We should know that menarche is your first period. We should say menstruation at least as often as we say period, because period is simply short for menstrual period. We should say menstrual products at least as often as we say period products, because again, there are menstrual period products. And I know period's a quick way, and period products has PP, and that's cute and quick, and it sounds like period positive. Alliteration is great, but menstruation is a word that's the same in many, many languages, and it's an actual biological word for the thing that we do. So it's great to reclaim it. The biology of menstruation, we should know what a vulva is versus a vagina. We should know the different stages of the cycle. We should know that there's a range of normal within lots of the period statistics, not just one average. You know, not everyone's cycle is exactly 28 days. On day 29, you're not definitely pregnant. You know, on day 14, you don't definitely ovulate. Depends on how long the different phases of your cycle are and what's normal for you. We should also learn what's healthy and typical so that we know how to ask for help when something goes wrong. We should learn about fertility, infertility, pregnancy, and contraception. We should absolutely learn about the menopause transition and not when it happens. We should learn about the wide range of menstrual products available, the internal, external, disposable, and reusable products from lots of different brands and companies. And we should, for me, this is the most important, but it's on the end because it's often not taught about at all. Media literacy. What are we being told about periods and menstrual shame in society? And how do these messages affect our well-being? How can we unlearn any negative messages that are out there and challenge them and create positive ones? So periods being blue is something kids have genuinely asked me about when I've done workshops in schools. And using blue liquid to show what menstruation is doesn't really help anyone prepare for their first period if that's what they're expecting. Blue is used very commonly, even in the packaging of menstrual products. And it's quite frustrating because this message of blue is kind of a bit of a lie. But I started researching this, next slide please, in the Ad Access archive and found out that even though menstrual products that were disposable kind of started out as bandages during World War I, the messaging from the corporations that were selling them, including Kotex, which is the next ad, next slide, please. The messaging was not focusing on it being kind of convenient, like, you know, easy disposal is the first thing listed on the right in that ad. It's a convenience product. You can throw them away. You don't need to wash them. You don't need to worry about how to get rid of them. You can carry them around. No. The unique selling point for disposable menstrual products was they will stop you being dirty and no one will see them and no one will smell you and you can whisper about it and they're discreet. And so every ad, so this is 1926, next please. The messages and the language is you know repeated 80 years later, and the messages and I'm just going to keep doing this because it's you can just click through them. The messages and the language are the same for every campaign. So, you know, don't panic, you won't leak. Don't panic, you won't leak. We'll hide the products in brown packaging. We'll make your periods disappear by disguising them as something else. We can whisper to you. We can whisper to you. We can whisper to you. And I think this causes menstrual shame, and internalized menstrual shame is a real problem because eventually you and the generation before you and the generations before you don't know it's even there, because these ads started in 1921 and it's now 2022 and we're still talking about this. So I started looking at ways to really challenge this. I sort of felt like the messages I'd got when I was at school shouldn't be messages that my pupils were getting when I was teaching them. And I realized that the biggest culprit was actually these multinational corporations that sent resources to schools and had been doing since 1946. And that's a big problem because I wanted to work with corporations and challenge them and change their attitudes. And I wanted to work with governments that were partly funded or in partnership with some of these corporations. And I wanted to work with schools and city councils whose teachers received free resources from these corporations. And it's a very difficult position to be in because it's really helpful to sort of have somebody have your back, but it's really unhelpful to feel like you're in competition or at risk from the people you are actually most in league with because of the field you're in. So I've tried to break down the difference between unhelpful corporate partnerships I've experienced and helpful ones. So unhelpful ones, the corporation portrays product donation as the goal and as the end of the period conversation. I think this reinforces leakage fear. There's research that shows that this encourages people to think more and more about leaking, about products, about panicking, about not having products, and about constantly being in a state of crisis around periods. And we know that periods are something cool our body can do, not something terrifying that happens to us. And these messages can get reinforced when product donation and the altruism and virtue signaling of product collection and donation by huge corporations is the goal. Education materials create brand recognition and brand loyalty in young customers when they show the packaging, the logos, the products, and the colorways and designs of well-known brands. And this can also affect those who are in charge of procurement of those products and their education and welfare. When corporations take ideas from activists and campaigners without supporting them or crediting them or paying them, that's a huge problem, and it happens all the time. When the corporations are influencing the government to improve their public image, gain tax breaks or other financial incentives, that's an enormous problem, because the service users are not at the heart of the work they're doing. Their corporate image and success is. And I don't mean individuals. There are individuals that work in all corporations that have excellent values and reach out and form partnerships. And then sometimes the bottom line is that they can't continue what they wanted to do because someone is stopping them because of some of these goals and desires and sort of end products. Next slide, please. A helpful corporate partnership means that the packaging, advertising, and products advance menstrual literacy. They are not forwarding taboos with the way they talk about their work or their products. They avoid shame in their language and actions. They don't conflate product availability with confident menstrual knowledge. They actually look at some of the wider points of menstrual knowledge that I mentioned earlier. And they reflect and represent the local community. People on packaging look like people that they serve. They ask people in the community what they want and act on it. And they credit and remunerate partners, inspiration, and authors of their campaigns. So I created the Period Positive Pledge so that I didn't have to shout at people when they did this wrong. This is a very positive list of 20 things any individual, charity, company, or government can do to make this all work a little bit more smoothly. It goes with a charter mark. The charter mark is an award you can earn. Next slide, please. And it started in Sheffield, where I live, as a pilot project, and it has happened in other cities as well. And it's grown into the Period Positive Places and Schools Award. So the Schools Award exists in Sheffield mostly, and is now being piloted in some schools in Wales and in London. And the Charities and Companies Award is national, and we're now looking at international partners for that. So STOP is the first charity that's in Swansea, and WUCA is the first company. They're based in London. They make period pants. STOP is Swansea Takes on Period Poverty, and they are inclusive in all of their goals, but we'll look more at that in just a second. Next slide, please. The schools program has a junior version of the pledge, which you can display and share with pupils, that puts it into young person friendly language, so that if they want to take the pledge on as an individual, they can. This is the school where I did my research. They've now become silver level award winners in the program, and they are looking at gold and teaching other schools about how to do this. So how period positive are you? It's not a rhetorical question. It's a way of thinking about the work. A key thing is, if you think about how much you know and then plot it on the chart of, let's go quickly, thank you, of how much everyone knows, we end up with this situation where we have some people who know a lot who are willing to talk about it. And you might get one or two people who don't know a lot who are also willing to talk about periods. So in my research group, there was one young man who got more and more confident talking about periods because he was willing to say he didn't know a lot. And eventually he just knew much more. Next slide, please. And what was lovely was he then became someone who could advocate for period positivity and share his knowledge with others because he'd learned from the other people that were willing to talk about it. Next slide, please. What's a problem is when you have a lot of knowledge, but you're too afraid to share it, or you don't have a lot of knowledge and you're too afraid to say, because then we don't get people together. We end up in situations where even, doctors, parents, teachers, public officials have the power to do something to improve menstrual equity, and they don't do it either because no one's asked them because they're afraid, or because they have been put off, some visceral response has occurred instead of an open dialogue because they've internalized these feelings and aren't sharing them. So one of the goals of the work is that everything is free at the point of use, available, joyful and fun. And one of the goals is just to stop this happening, where people who know and people who don't never get together. Next slide, please. And of course, talking about sustainability is crucial because most of the corporations that have the money make disposable products, but they have started seeing the popularity and the value of listening to activists who are advocating for reusable products. And as we look at, sustainability and single-use products are being banned in many places, they've sort of, seen the future and are acting accordingly to stay viable. Next slide, please. The language is something I've been asking for change on a lot, and it is actually starting to change. One supermarket here has changed their shop signage, and Boots, who I actually direct my request at, is working on changing their shop signage now and have already changed their online signage. But this is a thing I've been talking about and writing about for 5 years, in national media, and asking other people to put pressure on them about. I've got a couple of slides left. So menstrual products can be talked about, but not by people who don't know about them. So I've made it simple by teaching people a dance. If you can go back a little bit. One more, please. So the dance is, it's silly, but it helps people remember that there are 4 types of menstrual products. And that encourages people to talk about reusables, which is another one of the pledges. Even if you've not got a copy of the song, even if you've not got examples of reusable products in your classroom, you can still teach about them by doing a simple 4-step dance with hand gestures. And little things like that can go a long way. Another small gesture that I worked on with schools was you can't take your bag with you to the exam room. You have to leave it on the side. So when you sit your exams, if you need the loo or you're worried about your period, that can really distract you. And some of my pupils talked to me about this when I was doing my research. So we did the exams period campaign and created a period positive invigilation kit and had signs posted, next slide please, around the exam hall that allowed people to just know that if they needed to go to the loo, there were definitely menstrual products in the loo and they wouldn't have to worry about it and not focus on their exam. Small thing, big difference. Next slide, please. Period Positive Week is a week where we encourage this and get people on board with it and just sort of draw more attention to it. Next, please. A couple of examples of where things have gone very, very well indeed. Wales has worked with me in lots of capacities over a very long period of time. They've done cross-party work, and I've gotten to meet with AMs and party leaders, and they've actually built this work into their policy. So there's funding for infrastructure and products, not just products. There's a pledge to be 100% plastic free in any products that they give out or donate. City councils and city libraries are part of donation schemes. And this is one of the charities that I've worked with. I've also worked with the Welsh National Student Union and some work with the Girl Guides and a couple of other city councils, but it's been ongoing and collaborative and collective. And they've worked with each other and been put in touch with each other. The Girl Guides did work with me over a very long time and with their young people. They encourage young people to be activists, and they supported me to help them and do research for them. Bodyform changed their blood to red, and they credited me as being somebody who helped with that change. The Body Shop worked with a number of period organizations around the world and invited me to train their North American staff. So managers from all of their shops came and met to figure out how to challenge menstrual shame in their staff before they did a campaign for the public. And I worked with Brighton Council, and that's ongoing. So the work's spreading further and further to the point where I invited people to be global champions. And finally, having global champions means that anyone whose work aligns with the work that I'm doing with Period Positive can be a Period Positive global champion. We share good practice, we share successes and losses, we buoy each other up and meet online. And during the pandemic, it's been absolutely essential to have this support. The last two things I've worked on were with high profile companies. I worked with the BBC, and it was refreshing and delightful that they listened to me when I asked for people to be inclusive of all genders, inclusive of all products. They were most of the way there themselves. And it was delightful doing a children's television program with them. Working with two different publishers on books, I didn't have to have any conversations about those things. I talked about representation, and the people depicted in the books are visually representative of cultures, genders, and diverse abilities and disabilities in a way that most books that I grew up with were not. And it was a real privilege to be able to bring that to the work. So in conclusion, when it's gone well, there's been frequent, honest communication that's been long-term. You know, people come back to each other, me and them, over many years to keep developing the work. Things are funded other than products. It's been vital, since I don't give out or collect products, that I can keep this afloat by receiving funding sometimes. It's hard to do as Period Positive. It's easier to do as me. If the company and I have the willingness to break taboos, even when it's risky, you know, even when I'm nervous about contacting a campaign, or they're nervous about talking to higher ups in their own company, giving it a go has led to really positive and surprising results. Inclusion and representation is key. Nothing about us without us is a common refrain in activism, and it's relevant here. And finally, using humor and joy. This work wouldn't be possible without humor and joy. And that's why, even though the books I wrote are nonfiction, they are funny nonfiction. And that's the thing that comes back again and again about it. I was allowed to be silly, because even though these are serious topics and menstrual well-being has serious consequences if it's not met, talking about joy challenges shame in a way that nothing else can. Thank you.
Thank you, Chella, for this amazing, inspiring talk. So because of the time constraint, I'm going to quickly move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Danica. Danica is a co-founder of the Period Place, and let us welcome Danica.
Kia ora, everybody. I don't have slides to share, so is there a way to make me bigger, or does it not really matter? If everybody can just see me, they can see me on their own.
If they can pin you to the screen, then you will be the biggest screen on their screen.
You're pinned. You're enormous on my screen.
No, I feel like yawning. Okay. It's 10 to 4 in the morning in New Zealand. And if that doesn't show my bloody commitment to the menstrual advocacy, global menstrual advocacy efforts, then I don't know what does. Morena, everybody. So morena is morning, good morning, in Te Reo Māori, which is the language of Māori people here in New Zealand. I am a proud Australian who at 19 fell in love with a Kiwi boy, broke my mother's heart, and moved to London for a few years, Paris, and then settled back in New Zealand. And I absolutely adore it here. To me, it's the perfect mix of Sydney, which is where my parents were from, and my little hometown in northern New South Wales, Australia, which is called Woolgoolga, which had about 3,000 people there when I was growing up. So the whole city of Auckland has about 1.5 million people. It's basically just a big country town. And like I was talking to Vivi about the other day when we caught up for the first time, what I love about New Zealand is the size of it. The whole country is 5 million people, which is less than are in Sydney in Australia. And it is easy to get things done. So I feel like I have made more strides in Australia in New Zealand, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in the last 4 years than I would have in a decade in Australia. Because it's so small, there is local government, which is councils, and then there is central government. It's not like Australia or America where you have states with senators. And so when you want to get when you want to get shit done, it's easy to go and get it done. So growing up in Australia, for the first 11 years, it was just me and my mama before my dad came along. And, you know, growing up with a strong feminist mother who, you know, when the car broke down, we changed the tires. When something went wrong at home, we fixed it together. You know, I knew what periods were. I knew what bodies were. My favorite book when I was younger was Where Do I Come From? It was a little cartoon book. And I got in trouble in kindergarten for taking it in. Kindergarten in Australia is the first year of primary school. For taking it in and showing everybody, oh, this is a vagina, this is a penis, this is where you come from. None of this cabbage feminist mama. None of this cabbage patch crap. And my mother got pulled in and spoken to, and, you know, what's going on with your daughter? What's she talking about here at school? And Mum said she's just talking about where she comes from. And so you would expect that when my first period finally showed up, when I was about 12, that I would have been perhaps celebratory of it, or at the very least understanding and accepting of it. But I wasn't. I was filled with shame and I was scared. And when my period came in my underwear, first of all, I was very confused because it was quite brown and muddy and small. I was expecting this torrent of red blood. I wasn't expecting the blue, but I was expecting, you know, a waterfall of bright red. And so when it first came, the first couple of days, I was like, what is this? And then I realized what it was, and I went downstairs to the laundry and I got a bucket and I brought it up into my wardrobe, and I sat in my wardrobe with the door closed trying to wash my own undies because I didn't want my mum to know that I had had my first period. I didn't want anyone to know. And the reason that my mum found out is because, like I still do now, put something in the laundry bucket to soak it and seemed to forget about it for the next 6 to 10 days. So she's looking around the house trying to find her bucket. And, you know, she's going through my bedroom trying to figure out what I've done, and finds it and says, you know, comes to me and says, what is this, honey? And I was like, I got my period. And I shared that story because she tried so hard to create a safe space at home where I was educated and where I knew what was coming. But there was still so much shame and stigma in society that I internalized it, and I felt like crap when I got it. When the period place came about, it was like my first child and my second. It was a happy accident. I started it with a friend of mine a couple of months after the birth of my first son. Her and I were both on maternity leave, a little bit bored. We'd seen You by Kotex do that amazing pop-up in New York, and we were inspired to do something similar in New Zealand. We did a small event with a couple of $100 that did not look anything like their one. But it had so many people come along to the event of all genders, of all ages. And we were like, oh, you know, we're really onto something here. People actually really care. They just need to be told what is going on. And as we grew, we started off as a Facebook page, an Instagram page, and we were using, you know, $10 a week out of our mum pocket money to contribute to a joint bank account so that we could have a Gmail address, and so that we could, you know, pay for some Facebook ads to talk about stigma. And we started meeting different people in the menstrual activist space in New Zealand. And, you know, very early on to us, it was apparent that period products, you know, they're a Band-Aid solution. Access to period products is a Band-Aid solution. I'm talking about the donation of them. And, you know, there's an amazing Desmond Tutu saying that I've had stuck on my wall with skanky old blue tack that's been there for so many years. And it talks about how it's really important not just to pull people out of the river downstream. You've got to go upstream and understand why they're being pushed in the river and stop it. So we thought, okay, cool. We'll be up the river, up the top of the river stoppers. That's going to be what we do. So we were being loud and proud on social media. We were consuming content from all around the world, and we came up very early with our 3 pillars. And in an ideal world, the 3 pillars would be utilized by people in the order that we share them, which is conversation, education, and then access. But when you're living in extreme poverty and you need a period product to put in your underwear or inside you, as long as you know how to use it, reducing the shame is not necessarily your number one priority. Your number one priority that day might be access. So we do understand that, in the real world, conversation, education, access don't always get to be utilised in that way. But that was something that was really apparent to us straight away. As we got more of a following in New Zealand, we joined onto the team that had started to do some work, putting together some costings for a petition, putting some costings together that would show the government how much providing period products for schools in New Zealand would cost. So we joined the team, amplified the messages, and successfully got period products into all New Zealand schools. So they are in all New Zealand state integrated, and kura. Kura are schools that teach Te Ao Māori, which is the Māori worldview. And that's fantastic, and we're proud of it. And I've met the Prime Minister multiple times, and I have a photo of her on my desk holding my son, because my second son was still breastfeeding when that petition was formally received. And it was so interesting. We were down there, we flew down there, and she was running 30 minutes late. And I'm like, you're the Prime Minister, you can do whatever you want, boo. And so I was breastfeeding him in the lounge, waiting outside of her office. And then suddenly the doors were opened and it's like, come in. And I just stood up, kept breastfeeding him because it's lunchtime. What are you going to do? Say no to an 18-month-old? Try and get an 18-month-old baby off your boob. Keep in mind, this baby was 12 pounds when he was born, 5.5 kilos. So this little bubba just ate all day. So I'm walking in, and pretty much everyone in the room was like, oh, yeah, go you. When you got to eat, you got to eat. You just go for it. But the photographer who was there didn't know where to look. And it was what I'm assuming is a male photographer. I'm assuming his gender here. And he was so uncomfortable. And me being me, I'm going to do my best to not swear too much on this panel, but coming from country Australia, swear words are a part of the everyday culture, even the really, really naughty ones. And I just turned around and I was like, mate, this is we're here presenting a period petition to the government. Like, what the hell are you worrying about my boob breastfeeding for? I thought breastfeeding stigma went out the door 20 years ago. Don't tell me I've got to start a breastfeeding stigma charity as well. And the poor guy just wanted the floor to swallow him up. Anyway, so the period product tender that was released last year officially to roll out, while being very operational in nature and very much facilitated as a period product program in schools in New Zealand, they are releasing this month, so probably in another 6 months, but supposedly this month, the government is releasing an education tender to sit alongside it. And that has very much been from our activism and other activists in New Zealand and educators who have said, you cannot just provide period products. And rather than combining it together, they've done them separately so that they can have the right people doing them. I'm really proud of that. And the other thing I wrote down, Chella, when you were speaking, they're non-branded. So all the period products that are coming in are completely non-branded. And that's for two reasons. One, in New Zealand law, it's illegal to advertise to children in certain settings, in government settings. But number two, it also removes any brand loyalty, because we know that, menstrual product loyalty, when you buy that product, it has one of the highest rates of consumers using that product for many years or a lifetime, because it's such a personal, health choice that you're making with that brand. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, it removes any of the namby-pambiness that's around the products. And it's just going to be really simple, black and white. It will say, pad, it will say tampon. They're starting with disposable products only, and then after the first 2.5 years and feedback from the education trial, etc., they will see what they can incorporate for reusable. So I'm really proud of them for that. As we grew at the period place, our first group project was getting period products in schools, and I thought, shit, that's what we've achieved in the first year. What the hell is year two going to be? We've set the bar quite high for ourselves. Accidentally got pregnant. Had a second child. Accidental pregnancies often happen when two consenting married people of opposite genders have sexual intercourse without protection, it turns out. So I had 2 kids within 20 months. Husband had a vasectomy 2 weeks ago. Don't worry about that. We're safe. I just remember being really, really concerned that the effort that I had put in was going to go to waste. And it wasn't effort. It wasn't that I was worried about taking time out of my career from a perspective of, I'd lose rungs on the ladder, like a lot of my corporate friends have had to worry about. It was that I was so passionate about this activism that I was concerned that either somebody would come in and take my place, which I really had to go to therapy and sort of deal with. And my therapist had to remind me, it's not about you, it's not about your ego. As much as you enjoy this space and as much as you love what you do, it's about the work that's being done. And it's not about, your contribution matters, but you need to set it up so that, if you do get hit by a bus, that the work can go on without you. And so as we started to, as I removed my ego and we started to think about what the period place could be, bloody COVID hit. So we're all back inside, and I'm not sure if you are aware, but New Zealand has had an incredibly strong response to COVID. We shut down 2 years ago. Yesterday, I think, perhaps was the anniversary. And we still have not opened back up to the world. If you are not a citizen, you have not been able to come back. We had a little Australia-New Zealand bubble last year for about 2 months. And so Aussies and Kiwis could just go across the ditch to each other. But internationally, we've not had anybody. And there have been a lot of Tories who have whinged about that, don't worry. But I think it was the right response. And what it did is 2 things. One, it really allowed New Zealanders for the first time to stop jumping on airplanes and flying around the world, and allowed them to stop and look inward at what was going on in their own country. It stopped a lot of the private schools will head to Nepal or head to the Philippines or head to somewhere overseas to do work. And God, that is so important. And it needs to be and not or. But what it did allow was for that money or the programs or the ideas for those international trips to be focused inward, and people started noticing period poverty in New Zealand and talking about it. Thanks for that time tip. And we started getting a lot of attention, and that's when we moved into product distribution, which was not something that we ever wanted to do, but people kept coming to us and saying, you named the period place, I need a bloody period product. So we accidentally co-designed a period distribution network around the country and became the biggest period distribution, donators around the country. We last year crowdfunded for the hub, the Period Place Hub, which is the first menstrual hub in Aotearoa, and it's the suburb that I live in Onehunga. It's one of the oldest suburbs in Auckland, and we are on the main street, Onehunga Mall, and it says the Period Place, and it has periods in the windows. We have 20,000 cars go up and down the street every day, which might not sound like a lot, but for one of the suburbs, it's not bad. And really, amazingly, and keep in mind it's 4 o'clock in the morning here, and so I'm tired and emotional, but Chella, we have your book. I didn't even realize it was you until you came on. I know, and I took a photo and I just sent it to the girls, and I was like, oh my God, Chella's on the chat. And they're like, why are you messaging the group chat? It's 4 o'clock in the morning. The work chat, I've just spammed everyone on Slack. So, we make a real effort to get content from around the world. We make sure it's really inclusive. We did have to make the difficult decision very early on that because in New Zealand period products are expensive, it's about $7 New Zealand for a packet of pads at the supermarket. We made a foundational rule that any education that we have at the period place has to be inclusive, but the period product brands don't necessarily have to be inclusive, because we need to be getting period products out there. And we do feel that we're able to at least say at this point, read this incredible book and just ignore what's written on the packaging for now. So it's not perfect, but it's the right bloody step. So, for me, it's about using the system using the system, using the corporates, using the government, seeing what's out there and seeing how we can reframe it. You by Cotex is also one of our main sponsors, and they are incredibly passionate. And I've been really proud to be able to connect You by Cotex. There are people in New Zealand that we mahi with, that we work with, but it's the Australian team mainly that we work with. And I've been really proud to be able to introduce some of the You by Cotex team members who are madly passionate about what they do and trying to steer this global Titanic ship to do more grassroots activism in New Zealand and even in Australia, and introduce them with small reusable brands in New Zealand or small organic brands in New Zealand at different events that we've hosted. And every time I do, the small little brands will say, oh, they're actually amazing. I just assumed because they were a big global corporate, that they were going to be, all about the money. And I'm like, the business is, don't get me wrong, but the individuals often aren't. And we need to remember that. So I'm really proud of the work that's been done in New Zealand, but there's a bloody lot to do. And I am really inspired by, the people on this event. Like, oh God, when Vivi first reached out to me, I was like, do you see how many words this girl has after her name on LinkedIn? Like, what am I doing with my life? I'm 35. I've done nothing. Yes, sure, I've had 2 children. Whoop-de-doo, and I'm 4 years into the period place. But like, man, when I was your age, Vivi, I was drunk in London, trying to figure out how I could, get more money for my next pint. That was my priority, not being an activist. So, to some people, 35 might not be old, but to all of the young menstrual activists that are out there, you inspire me down here in New Zealand, and you make me think, if you can do it, I can do it. And to, Chella, keep bloody writing books, mate, we love them. I actually got a book deal as well. I'm writing a book in New Zealand this year called The Period Talk You Never Had. And it's going to be, it's advertised to anybody. So it's not going to be, let's have books next year. Oh my God, I can sign yours. It's going to be a really nice, inclusive, relaxed book, a little bit humorous, a little bit fun. And it's the idea is that anybody can read it, child or adult, menstruator or not. It's the period talk you never had for whatever person you are. Upstart Publishing in New Zealand is the publisher. They actually came to me. They called a meeting. They're like, would you like to write a book? And I was like, are you going to pay me? They're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. So, obviously, menstrual activism is getting to the point now where, and I quote the publisher when they said, we wanted to be less male, pale and stale. So we're starting with a period book. I was like, aren't you going from one extreme to the other, bro? It's definitely in the zeitgeist in New Zealand, as it is many places overseas. But like, both Vivi and Chella spoke to, we've got to make sure that we hold the boundaries and keep people in the right lanes to make sure that they're doing the right mahi. So thank you very much. It's now 4:10 in the morning and I have a very pasty mouth, so I'm going to have a glass of water, and thank you for your time, everyone. Kia ora.
Thank you, Danica. I was so impressed when I first talked with Danica for her energy, and when I first met her, it was an amazing experience. So with the time constraint, I'm going to quickly move on to our next speaker today, which is Rabia. She's the founder and executive director for AGF, which is the short-term name for Action Girls Foundation. Let us welcome Rabia.
Hi all, and thank you, Vivi, for inviting me to speak at this amazing forum. And I'm very pleased and happy to see all of you and the previous speakers. Yeah, you have all really inspired me, and wow, Danica's energy. That is so wonderful. I was just laughing here to myself. Well, So I was born in the northern region of Tanzania called Arusha, but later on, when I completed my primary education, I moved to the capital city of Tanzania, which is Dodoma, and I started living with my aunt because she was like kind of helping my mother with supporting my education. since my father left the family when I was in primary school. And living with my aunt is where I first seen my menstruation, and I was in Form 3 in my secondary school. Yeah, so I was like kind of shy speaking to her and tell her that now I've seen my first period. But I spoke to my cousin, and he like supported me and helped me telling my aunt that now I'm already grown up. That is how they term here in Tanzania. So yeah, she was happy, and she started telling me, oh, now you are grown up, you don't have to play with boys and all that, you'll get pregnant. So I was like, wow, this was the first time to hear like these kind of stories from her. And I think after some hours, and after giving me the sanitary pads and help me out to how to place the pad and use it. So she called my mom and told her like, okay, now Rabia is already grown up. So yeah, we have her. And what I've learned through the process is that many adolescents growing up in Tanzania are ashamed and are not free to speak of their first time period. Yeah, so as for me, I started adapting this, and it reached to a point where I was even able to talk and to ask my uncle, like, now I need some money to buy sanitary products so that I can continue well with studies and going to school. Yeah, so and from there I started being comfortable, and sometimes I was also speaking this issue with my friends at school, and find like the very similar experience that every one of us was having, like some hesitation talking about their first period, and especially to their closest person. Now imagine the adolescence age and this tendency of sharing each other's things. So sometimes we can give ourselves information that are not so much reliable. Yeah, so that is where I have learned, and I think that's what have inspired me also to found Action Girls Foundation after I graduated from my university education. Yeah, because there's a general belief in Tanzania that informing adolescents about sex and menstrual hygiene will just encourage them to be more sexually active, and the thing which is totally incorrect. So in such settings, raising awareness and educating adolescents concerning the menstruation and SRHR issues is a very, very burning desire in me. And what we do as an organization is raising awareness to these adolescents in school health clubs, but also in communities. So we're having like school health clubs in some of the secondary schools, like, and we're operating in 3 wards of a district called Mpopwa here in Dodoma region of Tanzania. So we're having like these school clubs, and we do talk to these adolescents on how they can be comfortable talking to about their menstruation. But what we do at the community is just encouraging parents or caregivers to be like, or to have an open communication with their kids so that they can be free to talk about them, because sometimes most of the girls are even dropping out of school by getting pregnant just because they are not being supported by their parents with the menstrual products. Yeah, sometimes we're having like challenge here in Tanzania. The girls are studying at a very long distance from the school, yeah, to home. So they sometimes in the way they face like challenge, and these other boys who are trying to approach them. Yeah, so if they face this challenge and they give them like petty money to buy the sanitary products, these girls can be like very easily persuaded and start engage themselves in sexually activity with the boys. At the end, they get pregnant. And the education policy here in Tanzania is that once you get pregnant, you're automatically expelled from the school. So that will be the end of their education. Yeah, that is how it was. But our former president was also supporting this policy, but currently we are happy and we are having a female president, and we're happy that she has changed this system, and now like even the pregnant girls are even allowed to go to school, but they are not going like in a formal education. They are just having like an alternative education. However, some policies are still being kept well or reformed just to allow them to also enter the formal school. So that is the main challenge here, and that's why we have also tried to engage both adolescents and their caregivers or parents and the community in general. So what we do also, we do some mass media announcement and education, like just to raise awareness to the public, just to make sure that every person in the community understand about the period, and that it is not like a shame. People can speak freely, about their periods, and also the community can be part or like a supportive system for this. And the other challenge that as the CSO industry we were having like in our country is at some point the policies or regulations for the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education were like not allowing us to also, or like the healthcare providers and the nurses, to go straight and give these menstrual hygiene or SRHR education to the school. So what we do is our smart advocacy, and our organization started doing this early January last year, and we went to speak with the district medical officer at the district that we're operating, and we tried to speak to him, but he was also positive, and he allowed some of the nurses in this village dispensary to go with us during the menstrual hygiene management day, to go with the nurse to the school, and she was also able to talk to the students on how to maintain hygiene during their days. And we were happy that to support and prepare the toolkit for that presentation that the nurse just gave, because there's also some limitations to what you can speak with the students. Like you cannot share like so much of these informations, like the use of contraceptives. That is still not allowed with the education, according to the education policy. So we were happy that this was succeeded. But another thing that we were succeeded to do in collaboration with the council and the district that we're operating is we also intervened in some of the education stakeholders meeting, where we found out that each school is supposed to have like I can say like a side funding, or like a special funding that I can say like a donation package that people can donate and help supporting buying the sanitary pads to the students that cannot afford to buy the sanitary products. So after observing that, then we just came up with commitment with the education officers at the district, and we were open to support them, like doing some fundraising as an NGO, and just involving different stakeholders, including the even government leaders, and especially female leaders, which are working in that district. Yeah, so we do sort of fundraising, and we also involved like the government bank from their CSR. So they gave us support, yeah. And we were able to purchase sanitary products for the 30 of the students in our school clubs who were not able to afford these products. So we bought the products and we supplied to them, and they were able to use them for 3 months consecutively. And during the donation, we also invited some parents to come and just like learn and from the government and us as well on how they can be open to support their children, because sometimes you can just find out a parent is able to buy like the local alcohol and just get drunk, but they are not willing to support their children with menstrual products. So it's like a kind of education and all that. But the challenge also in the community is that many, I can say, parents are having like, I can say, a fear that when they are called to the schools, they think like maybe something could be wrong. So we are still working also to change those narratives. And yeah, it was a little bit succeeded, I can say, in that way. And however, we are observing that challenge. We tried new approach to like reach the parents separately, go and talk to them separately as an organization, and not involving like the school part or the government part. Yeah, so a bit that was successful, and we're happy to say that some of the students that we supported with the sanitary parts donation are now able to receive some support from their parents. And we are happy that, yeah, we are happy that some of them have also completed their O level. They have graduated, because we are having like from Form 1 to Form 4. So some of them have graduated last year, November, and we are also keeping incorporating new students who are just enrolling the secondary education, and try to keep them in our school clubs. And this year also, we're having a plan soon. I think next month, we are going to start training these students now with partnership and other organizations on how to make like the reusable sanitary pads. Yeah, so that because we have observed that we have supported them just for 3 months last year, and now we have to come back again and organize the other fundraising projects. So this take a little of long time, and we have thought that if they be able to produce these reusable sanitary pads, they'll be able to use them for a long period of time, like 2 years. Yeah, so that's our coming plan. And also at the part of the
Very
school.
sorry, but since the time's up, so we are probably gonna speed it up. Thank you, Rabia, so much for your talk. You can still share more during the panel discussion, but we have to give the floor to Radha for now. And thank you, Rabia, so much. Let's give her a round of applause. And now we are going to move on to our next speaker, which is Radha. And do make sure that you guys type in your questions if you want to ask any questions to our speakers. Type it in the chat box, and our staff will collect all of them, and we can answer them during the panel discussion. So the floor is yours, Radha. Radha, I think we can't hear your voice. There's some technical issues here. Radha, can you hear us? I think there's some internet connections with Radha's computer. So before Radha comes back, I guess we can actually answer some of the questions that are already being asked among the audience. So there are two people raising their hands actually right now. The first one is Padmini Murthy. Do you want to address your questions?
Thank you so much. Yes, first of all, thank you for this interesting panel discussion. Very briefly, I am one of the United States public delegates of the official delegation to the CSW this year, and I am a global health lead of the American Medical Women's Association. And one of the issues is I've been working a lot on menstrual equity, and I just wanted to share two things. One is, this is not a conversation we need to shy away from. We need to talk about it. And it's normal. Like, my pitch is, if I talk to anybody, and again, these remarks are my own, I'm not speaking in any official capacity. I want to put that on record, is that if your mom didn't have a period, you wouldn't be here. That's the end bottom line. So it's like, there's nothing to be ashamed. And just I wanted to share very briefly, I was at the ICPD in Kenya in 2019 before COVID actually started, whenever that is, if we remember those times. And unfortunately, just before the ICPD, there was this young girl in Kenya who was shamed for getting her period in school, and she had stained her dress. This child committed suicide, hung herself. Her mother came home and she saw this child hanging from a roof. So to me, everybody puts people on the moon, billionaires go on space flights. To me, empowerment starts that we are not ashamed that we have a period. It's normal. And, you know, as the mother of a daughter, and I think it's so important, and as a woman and as a human being, it's normal. Why should somebody be ridiculed that they have a period? So thank you all. And, you know, I don't see any way of typing my email in the chat, but I could just share it. And, you know, anybody, please feel happy to email me. So do I have your permission, Madam Chair, to share my email? Because there's no tap. I don't see how I can put my email in the chat. I don't see that.
So if you click on the chat symbol that's on the right,
I don't even see it because I'm on my iPad, so maybe it's different.
Oh, okay.
That's why. So can I just give my email? Or Ruby, can you type in my email? I see my friend and colleague Ruby here. Yeah, it's MINIMURTHY1234@gmail.com. If anybody could type that in, I would appreciate it, because I can't. I'm on my iPad. Oh, thanks, Ruby. Yeah, she did it. And thanks, Vivi. So great conversation. Let's all continue working on this together. And also, I'm a part of the Sustainable Menstrual Coalition through the American Medical Women's Association. We are trying to reach menstruators in India. And once we do that, we will definitely, you know, we want more people. We're all on board. And it's great you're wearing red. Go red. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love your energy as well. We were actually just having a panel discussion about the incident that you mentioned in our period lecture, which we coped with Ruby, Professor Ruby, and National Taiwan University today. So what a coincidence. I think we haven't got Radha back yet. I think she's still trying to solve out her internet issue, but we do have another person lining up for asking questions. We have Annie.
Yes, please.
Oh,
Hi,
1
everyone.
second. I think Radha
My name is
is
Dr.
back.
Nchewi Annie.
But yeah, Annie, you
Okay,
can
no
finish your
problem. I
question.
will. I'm president and founder of Pink Africa Foundation.
Yeah.
I
Can I speak?
in Nigeria. I joined the panel of discussion because it talked about period poverty. Period poverty went to its climax during the COVID. We realized that pads were not parts, toiletries, tampons were not part of the relief materials that were shared during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so many women resorted in using very unhealthy products with attendant complications of pelvic inflammatory disease, subfertility, unsafe abortions, because people got pregnant in the process because periods didn't stop for anyone. They only became interrupted because people were forced to stay in enclosed spaces with people they knew and people they didn't know because of the lockdowns of the pandemic. So we had lots of issues with period poverty. And so my NGO, we came together and we're saying, is it possible for us to join hands with people all over the world, talk to people who are in charge of policy formulations, for us to have free pads in open spaces for at least women who cannot afford it or girls who are under 18. So I don't know if there's any NGO here present who is doing anything with regards to the menstrual space, who can encourage us and maybe show us the way on how to develop a period bank in open spaces, say churches, malls, train stations, bus stations, marketplaces, mosques, and places of worship or schools. And just if there is any contribution like that, I'll appreciate it very much. And if you don't mind, I will drop my email in the chat box. Thank you very much. Awesome presentation from Danita. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. So now we're finally getting back to our last speaker for today. Welcome, Radha.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can I start? Do you hear me? Okay. Namaste. Good evening from Secretariat Office of Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation. It's a global network for changing the narratives around menstruation, from hygiene to dignity, and from 5 days bleeding to life cycle approach. We have been working more than 20 countries all around the world, and we have been doing educational webinars, policy advocacy, research, conducting research, and also speaking all around the globe, including universities. Last week, we had hosted a panel, parallel event in CSW entitled on missing driver for menstrual discrimination is missing driver for child marriage globally. Next slide. I have so many stories to share, but today, due to time limitation, I will briefly discuss about the concept of dignified menstruation, my motivation, and some examples of public-private partnership for promotion of dignified menstruation in Nepal only. Yeah, next. Let me share my story. When I was about 7 years old, I knew the menstrual discrimination from my mother's and 3 sisters. I deeply traumatized. I did not like to live as a girl child. I constantly keep thinking about how could I die, because I saw the operation demonization at my home and in my surroundings. Please keep clicking so you can see the, yeah. And then at the age of 9, I left home for committing suicide because I did not like to live as a girl child. So, but it somehow it could not happen. But I was living with the thinking of how could I die, how did I choose the inappropriate method for committing suicide. And at the age of 14, I had a first menstruation in my life, and again I left home for 5 days.
because I did not like to follow any kind of restriction as my three sisters and mother. At the age of 15, around 15, I got the opportunity to win to the nursing college, where I knew about the essence of menstruation. Since then, I started to speak about dignified menstruation, whatever and wherever possible. This is how it is already about 4 decades that I started to speak on menstruation. Next, please. Next slide. Let's make a old tour for assessing the menstrual practices all around the globe. In Ghana, during the menstruations, menstruators not allowed to touch or cross the source of water. In Burundi, Nigeria, and South Sudan, they restrict the menstruators to wash or taking bath. In Egypt, they are not allowed to cook or eat cassava bread. In Bangladesh and Nepal, not allow the menstruators to participate in any kind of religious activities. In Ecuador, Bolivia, and Argentina, the menstruators not allowed to eat certain fruits and milk product, meat product. And in Australia, UK, Canada, during menstruation, the girls did not like to participate in outdoor activities. Just last 2 weeks before, there was one study shows that 78% girls did not like to participate in sports. So these are the few examples of the menstrual discrimination. Because of that, the constantly the human right of the menstruators are violating. It could be the right to dignity, right to food, right to participation, right to freedom, or right to social justice, or right to participation, right to education, right to health. There are so many international human rights violated during the menstruation or because of the menstruation throughout the life cycle of the menstruators. Next, please. So in this connection, Global South Coalition see the menstrual discrimination is a problem, root cause of the problem, and it refers to taboos, shyness, stigma, restriction, abuses, and violence associated with the menstruation throughout the life cycle of the menstruators. That means it is not only for the girls and women, it's but also for trans men, queer, and it is a form of sexual and gender-based violence, and it is a violation of the human right. It is practicing everywhere across the globe with a different name, forms, and magnitude. It is very complex and multifaceted. Next, please. Many of us globally, we engage in the violence. It could be, we are so emotional, we are so passionate to raising the fund and working on it, like acid attack, sexual abuse, rape. Keep clicking. And then child marriage, wherever we saw the blood, wherever we saw the wound or broken wounds, we talk a lot. And we really forget to talk about the discrimination like caste, class, gender, sexual identity kind of thing. And whatever taking place, whatever the situation, either violence or discrimination, the menstrual discrimination is everywhere. It is an underlying cause. It is underneath for all kinds of situations. It could be in a pandemic, it could be in the tsunami, it could be in the earthquake, everywhere. The menstrual discrimination exists, and that impact to the life of menstruators at immediate as well as long-term level. Please clicking. Click. Yeah, click. See the complexity, how much complex the menstrual discrimination. Menstrual discrimination construct the power and patriarchy, but we never realized, we never think in that way. Next, please. So in this connection, Global South Coalition define dignified menstruation is a solution. Solution for what? Free from any forms of discrimination. For to those who born with the uterus and ovaries, and it should be applied 24/7, 365 days in any humanitarian setting. and from birth to death. Next, please clicking, don't wait. And it has to go throughout the life cycle. So dignified menstruation means free from any kinds of discrimination. That means taboos, stigma, shyness, abuse, restriction, violences. With the menstruation throughout the life cycle of the menstruators. It's not, we cannot address in isolation. We cannot, if we keep talking about the education, we are missing the health, we are missing the gender equality, power relation, patriarchy, and that all comes from the menstrual discrimination. And the menstruation in this planet exists for last 4 billion years, but we don't talk about it. We just simply started talk about it right now. Next. So in this connection, this is an example from Nepal. We have 25 ministries, and no matter which ministry you have been working or what kind of project you have been working, you may work on education or health or menstrual cup or pad or in pandemic or in with the adolescent girls. You need to bring the menstrual dignity in the front and center. It should be the cross-cutting issue. If you are working only in the distributing the menstrual pad or tampons without having the dignity, you are missing the human right. You are missing the menstruation is a political right. And without political right, without human right perspective, we cannot address the menstrual discrimination, what the global community or menstruator facing for centuries. Next, please. So this is the example from Nepal. The 5 countries have been working on dignified menstruation. The Ministry of Water Supply focusing on toilet water and waste. Ministry of Education focus on the formal, informal educations, and we have lobbying for including all aspect of the dignified menstruation, including the menopause in the school, universities, curriculum, including doctor, nurses, and the public health education. And Ministry of Health is focusing on counseling and addressing the health complications, including the menopause. And Ministry of Women, Children, Elder Citizens focusing on because it has a scope by role and responsibility. Ministry of Women has so many issues. It has to address the issues related with the children, women, elder citizen, LGBTQI, disability. That is why it is working very broadly. And the Ministry of Environment is working for the eco-friendly waste management and working for the standardization of the menstrual product. And here I also like to remind, when we talk about the sustainable development goals, Global South Coalition strongly believe that out of 17 goals, 9 goals directly linked with the dignified menstruation. That is why the ministries who are responsible for the different sustainable development goals, they are trying to address on that as well. Next. And these are the few examples which have been doing on behalf of the government of Nepal. First time in history, global history of menstrual movement. In 2017, government of Nepal drafted the policy on dignified menstruation. I am one of the core member of that. And likewise, there are varieties of activities. I have a very limited time. So we started government of Nepal, the National Human Rights Commission and Global South Coalition started the Dignified Menstruation Day for December 8 since 2019. And also we conducted the 3 days international workshop and concluded with the 12 points declaration. You can find all details in website of www.dignifiedmenstruation.org. Next, please. And these are the few examples how we have been working with the private organizations. Next, please. The bank also engaged for celebrating the dignified menstruation. Then they partner with us. Next. This is the school. Private schools also organizing so many activities to mark the Dignified Menstruation Day at December. Next. And also next, please. Next. This is, we also have the pad factory. This is the contribution from the hotel, private hotel contributing for promotion of the dignified menstruation. Next. And the challenges, it is very important. I have been working and my colleagues have been working all around the globe without funding. We often experience blaming, exclusion in Nepal and outside in the global level, because we are talking about the dignity, and even the UN is not ready to address the menstrual discrimination at large. Next. From here, I do challenge the UN, the CEDA committee, the CSW committee, commission, they need to consider independent or standalone issue for the dignified menstruation. Otherwise, we cannot prevent the sexual and gender-based violence, we cannot improve the sexual and reproductive health, and we cannot promote the human right. Here, we have to initiate the dialogue everywhere, at the individual level, at the family level, at the workplace, and everywhere, including UN. Globally, the home is an unsafe place. That is why we have to dismantle the menstrual discrimination and the patriarchy, because the menstrual discrimination causes stop and save the patriarchy. Next. Next, please. This will be the very last. Next, please. Last slide, because I'm just hurry up for maintaining discipline of the time management. You can find all details on in our website. We can follow us in Insta, Twitter, Facebook, and we have been conducting the webinars fortnightly. So if any of you like to be a partner or member or a speaker, you can join with us. You can write to us, and if any of you like to work as an intern, you also most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you,
for listening.
Rado. Thank you.
So
Thank you for your presentation. Yeah, so with the time still clocking, we are moving on to our panel discussions. I'm pretty sure you guys have a lot of questions. I've seen a lot of discussions going on in the chat box already. So for those of you, so all the audience, if you would like to have the contact info from, being shared to everybody, please feel free to put down your contact info in the chat box, and we're going to collect all of them and make a contact list and then send it to everyone in this meeting room who would like to be, sent these emails. And yeah, so for the panel discussions, we're having Terry joining us as well as other speakers that has just presented. And the first question would be, I'm going to put out this question here just now. What is the most important thing that you think, throughout your experience and your journey promoting menstrual equity? What is the most important thing to actually achieve our end goal throughout your journey and your experience? Anyone wants to answer that? Oh, you can simply raise your hand if you want to answer that. Terry.
Hi, I'll jump in. I feel like everybody might be slightly tired from their keynote speakers, so I'll go first. Hi, I'm Terry. I'm the education manager at Bloody Good Period. For those of you who don't know us, we're a charity here in the UK that fights for menstrual equity, and we do that in 3 ways. We do that through delivery, so we are the largest period product distributor, free distributor in the UK, and we provide period products mainly to refugees and asylum seekers, but also anyone who needs them. We also do education programs, which is my job, again mainly to refugees and asylum seekers. And finally, we normalize conversations around periods by doing awesome stuff like being a part of the UK government's period poverty task force, or by working with big corporations and companies to make their workspaces more equitable and menstrual health friendly. So that's a bit about us. From my experience, the most important thing about an effective public-private partnership is finding your driver. So think about one person in the public sphere, whether that be a local government member, a civil servant, or a member of parliament, but use them and build a really, really positive relationship with them, because they're the people who are going to drive change in the big policy places, in the government, in all of the spaces that you need to do. So find the person who can sing your mission throughout government.
Thank you, Terry. I guess Danica also has a lot of experience working with the government. Would you like to share some of the important findings that you found throughout your journey?
Yeah. Building relationships is definitely really vitally important. Remembering what you're doing and why you're doing it. I found in terms of the most important thing and the easiest thing that an individual can do at home, the thing that I suggest to people is put period products in your toilet. So don't have them in the cupboard in your bathroom, have them out. So in our house, our toilet is separate to our sink and shower. And even though I have a marina, I don't even have a period. I think I have a small baby who's woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Hello? 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 Unless there's a ghost opening my door. Hello? Come in. Come in, cheeky boy. Oh, it is way too early for you to be awake. Come and say hello to the world. I gave birth to another white male, just what the world needs. This is Jamesy. Yes, you do. You have 2 dummies. Well done.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm brilliant. I think I can illustrate what you were saying and entertain Jamesy at the same time.
There you go.
I made a menstruation crustacean station. It's a little lobster that lives on the back of the toilet and holds a pad and a tampon for guests. And I invite people to make them sometimes based on an internet meme made real. Yeah, but we just make crustaceans.
Amazing. So like just having them available in the bathroom for everybody who comes over to your home, putting them in your workspace, petitioning government, all that sort of stuff. That's the big stuff that's really important. But it's also really important to have them available in your home. So for me, I think the most important thing to remember is not just the big stuff that's going to change the world, but what's the small stuff that you can do as well that also changes and impacts on people around you.
Thank you, Danica. All right, so Sylvia has collected quite a lot of different questions here from the chat box. We've got questions asking about, so, someone asked the questions about in rural areas, the communities where the community is more conservative and less of a period or sex education resources are in schools available in these rural areas. What are the suggestions for that? How we can make sure the access towards these education in rural areas is available for everyone.
I can try to respond to that. So sometimes that happens for me with different faith communities, where one thing that happens is people are afraid to lose face, to be seen by other senior or elder members of the community talking about something that's considered taboo. So one thing I start with is saying that they're already doing a brilliant job meeting with me, because it's already helping. They're already being an excellent community leader and supporting their young people by having the conversation and asking the questions. And then I tend to start by saying, how did they learn about periods? And then I share how I learned. And that sort of opens up the conversation. And I also tend to bring a lot of little objects and toys with me, because it seems silly, but grown-ups respond just as well as kids to doing a dance or holding toys. And it doesn't happen in like a disrespectful way. I'm always willing to make myself look silly. And if someone wants to join in, they do. But if they're not going to join in and they're keeping a very straight face, or think I'm minimizing serious concerns, I then say, this works really well with young people. And a great way to broach a scary topic with young people is to use these techniques. Would you like to borrow them? Or would you like to have me do a sample session with some young people in your community or something like that? But another thing that's sort of worth doing is asking them what they want. You know, obviously that's true for everyone, but sometimes people aren't asked, you know, like, what do you want the most? It's often just assumed that somebody wants what you're giving, you know, and it's not, you can be surprised. But I think, like, you know, reassuring someone that they're not doing the wrong thing, or that even if they say the wrong words or support young people in a way that they know isn't the best, that just by trying to improve it, they're already making a brilliant start and it's already good. I think knowing that shame is in the room is important. Acknowledging it is valuable. Brené Brown is a shame researcher. She's very popular. She's got books and like lots of videos and a podcast. And she doesn't talk about menstrual shame. She talks about general shame. But it's really valuable to sort of have some of her ideas like in mind when you're approaching someone and shame's around.
Thank you, Chella. I think Terry also wants to talk about this question, right?
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump off the back of what Chella said about like not assuming. So I work for Bloody Good Period now, but I've also worked across the Middle East and in East Africa delivering menstrual health education. And one of the things I think I've learned is that a lot of people make assumptions about conservative communities, that they won't receive sex education or menstrual education well, or that levels of knowledge of things will be low. And it's also, from my experience, most of the time not true. Actually, these communities, because they have a lot of women-only spaces, have way better conversations around periods, far less shame around periods, and are just a lot more open in talking about these topics. So yeah, I would just say don't make assumptions, and as Chella said, ask people what they want. I think that's really, really important.
I think we've got very similar findings here in Taiwan as well. So in some of the rural areas, they're actually more susceptible to some of the period education materials because they are a closed community and they want to talk a lot, you know, among themselves as well. But we do find a shortage of period education resources, especially in rural areas and those schools in rural areas. So what we have done is that we cooperate with local businesses, not necessarily the menstrual product companies, usually other companies. So we've cooperated with education companies, we've cooperated with tech companies, and they sponsor us to distribute these educational toolkits to all these rural schools and train their teachers, train their nurses, and actually, you know, teach with them and then mentoring with them. So we make sure that the whole program is long-lived, and then we make sure that they do have adequate amount of resources that they need to teach period, and they are comfortable teaching period as well. I think Radha also... Yeah.
Okay, it goes back to what you said at the beginning, Vivi. It's making yourself obsolete, not needing us one day is an important goal, you know, like teaching people how to teach themselves and encouraging people to create their own resources based on the principles of doing it openly and positively and inclusively means that we're done. You know, we can go like, you know, read about dinosaurs or write about the planets or that's just me. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Radha.
Yeah. In my experience, we always assumed at the global level, we assume that the people from Asia and Africa are uneducated, poor. That is why they don't have a knowledge. Likewise, while we are living in our capital cities or urban cities, we are blaming to the people who are living in the rural areas. And I worked with the parliamentarian ministers and up to the people who are never ever been to school. and I found more comfortable, more easy to motivate the people who never ever been to school. I always use the stories, participatory methods. I play with them. I work with them. I teach with the different participatory methods, and they are the most powerful champions. The religious leaders, the traditional healers, the women, the boys, the politicians, they become the champion, and they have been doing the work in a so-called rural areas. But the cities, the educated people, the universities people, those who have a PhDs, they blame me. They don't like to listen me. They don't like to unlearn, and it is very difficult. And that also applied in the global north. When we see from the perspective of the global south and global north, the friends, sorry for saying this, but in my experience, the friends from global north, they simply said, oh, you are coming in your country, because you are from Nepal, you are poor country. They just explain like that way. But we are the survivors. We are the survivors. We know what we have, and because of the political reason, global political reason, our voice not heard, but our story is misinterpreted. Our feeling, our experience are not recognized. We wrote a book, we share the stories, but no one like to publish our book. No one like to buy our book. How could we change? How could we change? Through the lens of dignified menstruation, we had published the book already. It is already 2 years, but our book not published. We don't find the funders as like other books. And we simply said we believe in democracy, we believe in the inclusion, we believe the survivors approach principle, but in practice we are not ready. We are not ready. And this is the high time we have to listen the survivors. We have, if we are really wanted to change the narratives around menstruation, we have to listen the survivors, and this is the very high time. Thank you.
Thank you, Radha, for your response. Round of applause, seriously. And so here comes the end of today's event. Because of the time constraint, a lot of people need to go to sleep. I'm pretty sure about this. I think we're all really tired, but really inspired by all the talks that has been presented and all the discussions that has been going on in this panel discussion. So before we move on to closing this meeting room, we're going to do a screenshot as a group photo for today's panel discussion. Please feel free to turn on your camera if you feel comfortable doing it. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, that's completely fine. But we do encourage people to turn on your camera to join our group photo. So Sylvia will do the screenshot for us. And okay, just 5 more seconds for people to actually turn on the camera. All right, so we're having more people now, actually. Right, so I'm gonna count 1, 2, 3, and Sylvia's gonna make multiple screenshots. So 1, 2, and 3. Right, I'm pretty sure she got it already. Oh, she said we can do another one. If you guys don't mind, we can do a gesture that we always do in With Red. So it's like this. It's a blood drop. And we want to make it cute, so we do this. Right, so if we can do this. 1, 2, 3 with your smile. I'm pretty sure she got it. You got it? Okay, Sylvia got it. So thank you guys for joining us today from all around the world. And I would really like to thank everyone, especially those who wake up early or stay up late. And I would really like to express my sincere appreciation to all the speakers and panelists that, make the time to actually join our panel today. So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy the event, and we would definitely make the contact list for everyone. And good luck, everyone, towards your journey fighting for menstrual equity, and have a nice day and have a nice week. So see you around. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.